afternoon, everyone. And it's with great pleasure that I invite you and welcome you all to this CME on a very important topic, that is antenatal screening assessment for Down syndrome. It is a highly preventable disorder. And this is our second CME of the newly formed forum, Delhi Gynae Forum, Dwarka. I now invite Dr. Deepika, the president, to say a few words.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to say namaste to Dr. Shada Jain. And of course, we have so many of our friends here, Dr. Khanna. And it's really a pleasure to welcome you to Dwarka again. So it's a very new branch, as Dr. Leena said, thanks to Dr. Shada Jain. We are trying to, spice up academically. And we have kept these monthly meetings, which are going to be held on the fourth Thursday of every month. So this time, we have asked Dr. Seema Thakur to do a presentation. And it's a very important topic because even now I see that there are a lot of misconceptions amongst the obstetricians on what to do. Some of the points, Dr. Seema, I would like you in addition to touch upon is, after the first trimester is normal, do you still need to have a second trimester? Because I've had these type of patients in my setup recently. Then, the second trimester quadruple marker turns abnormal. And then what happens is that they are done quite late. Today, I had a patient who is 18 weeks and 5 days. And to order an NIPT, then after that, are you going to do an amniocentesis because the first trimester screen was normal? And then again, there are various markers. So what do you do if one turns abnormal, the others are normal? So there are so many, things that we need to discuss. So I now invite Dr. Seema Thakur, who is the convener of this CME today, to take over and start the proceeding scientific sessions. Dr. Seema, please.
Yeah. So thank you, ma'am. So because this is, as we discussed, we will be discussing about the practical aspects of the Down syndrome screening. So it's my pleasure, duty to welcome Dr. Shada Jain ma'am, and who everyone knows she is a mentor for this TGF forum, and she has been a faculty for 2 decades at PGI Chandigarh and Lady Hardinge Medical College. She is the founder and general secretary of this Delhi Gynecologist Forum, which we are doing today. She is a member and expert OBY in Ethical Committee of MCI 2018 to 20, and again in National Medical Council from 2021 to 23, and decorated by Lifetime Achievement Award and Living Legend Award by many prestigious bodies. A very well-deserved ma'am. And she has a passion for teaching, safety for the doctors, and creating medical legal awareness. I welcome you, ma'am, with wholeheartedly. So thank you for being with us. And for the experts of this CME, that is the updates for the Down syndrome screening, we have none other than the Professor Deepika Deka, who is a consultant fetal medicine at Cloud9 Gurgaon. She has currently joined. She has done her MBBS and MD from Guwahati Medical College, Assam, and she has done her senior residency from AIIMS, and she has been a faculty AIIMS since 1988 to 2021. And she has been ex-chief of maternal fetal medicine at the same institute. She has been director AIIMS Kalyani, West Bengal, and ex-vice chancellor SS University of Health Sciences, SMS. So I welcome you, ma'am. Our next expert is well-known figure, Dr. Sanjeevani Khanna. She is MD, FICOG Diploma in Advanced Gynae Laparoscopic Surgery. Currently, she works as a director and head, Department of Ops and Gynae, Fortis Hospital, Shalimar Bagh, New Delhi. And she has been a former professor, Department of Lady Hardinge Medical College, Hospital, New Delhi. She is a chairperson of DGF Forum North and vice president, Indian Association of Gynecology, Delhi chapter 2021 to 2023. I welcome you, ma'am. Our next expert, who is a well-known radiologist practicing in this area, Dr. Alok Vashni, who is a consultant radiologist and director, Central Diagnostic Dwarka, New Delhi. He has done his MBBS from UCMS and MD from Safdarjung Hospital, and he has been in ultrasound practice for past 20 years. and a keen interest in embryonic and fetal dysmorphology, Doppler imaging and fetal echocardiography. He has presented many papers and delivered lectures at various national and regional conferences organized by SFM, IRIA, and Indian College of Radiology. And my interaction with him, I can tell that all his images which he produces to us, they are like a book figure. So that's how I know him. So welcome, Dr. Vashni. So now so just to begin with, prenatal testing is the best strategy for reducing the burden of the genetic disorders and congenital disability which cause significant postnatal, mental and physical deformity. Universal prenatal screening is available for many common genetic disorders such as Down syndrome, thalassemia, neural tube defect, and several prenatal screening tests are now available for Down syndrome. Due to the absence of any definite guidelines and additional lacunae in the awareness regarding the appropriate prenatal screening in our country, as Dr. Data has already highlighted, the optimum benefits of these screening protocols are not reaching the population. So this webinar, this focuses on the various prenatal screening and diagnostic tests that are available for the Down syndrome screening. And this attempts to outline the most cost-effective and the gestational age-appropriate strategy for prenatal screening for the Indian healthcare setup. And the recommendation suggested would be served as a source guide for the prenatal screening formulation guidelines. So for the Down syndrome in India. So with this, I begin our first session, and which is on the first trimester screening for aneuploidy by Dr. Savita. I would introduce the chairpersons first. Dr. Suchita Malhotra, due to some reason, she couldn't join physically on today, but she has been served in the Indian Army as a gynecologist and her service in 2003, and she's practicing in Dwarka since 2003 and is a director of Malhotra Clinic and Fertility Center, and also working as a visiting consultant to Venkateshwara and including the Fortis Gurgaon. And now I introduce Dr. Madhulika. Dr. Madhulika, welcome. So she is working as a senior consultant and unit head at Akash Healthcare Hospital, Dwarka. She is a life member of Foxy and IMA, and she is an alumni of IMS BHU, and her special interest is in infertility and high-risk pregnancy. Welcome, Dr. Madhulika. And our next chairperson is Dr. Seema Sahgal, and she is a consultant of Gynae and IVF and working at MKW Hospital as a medical superintendent and director. It's My Baby IVF 2015 till current, and she's also HOD and senior consultant of Obs and Gynae department at MKW Hospital since 1998. Welcome, Dr. Seema. Now I request chairpersons to invite Dr. Savita, who is the speaker for this session.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is a pleasure to introduce Dr. Savita. To begin with, she is an MBBS from Lady Hardinge Medical College, and she has completed her MS from Maulana Azad Medical College. She is an ex-consultant from BL Kapoor Hospital, Pusa Road, Delhi, and she has completed her fellowship in fetal medicine from Apollo Hospital, Delhi, and she is also accredited from Fetal Medicine Foundation, UK. She is working at Joy Healthcare at Venkateshwar Hospital, and her area of interest is management of high-risk pregnancy and fetal interventions and therapy. All the best, Dr. Savita, and wish to hear you. Thank you. Dr. Savita.
So just a minute, please. Am I audible? Am I audible to everyone?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, fine. So good afternoon, everyone. So today I'll be discussing about our approach to first trimester aneuploidy screening. So I'll go from basic to advanced. So every woman has a risk of her fetus and baby having a chromosomal defect. So prior risk depends on the maternal age and the gestation of the pregnancy. And then the patient-specific risks are calculated by multiplying the prior risk with a series of likelihood ratios, which depend on the results of the various screening tests. So what are the screening tests for the common aneuploidy? So we have phenotypic screening, genotypic screening, and biochemical screening. Phenotypic screening is with the help of the ultrasound. Genotypic screening is through NIPT and IPS, and biochemical screening is a double marker. So this is a detection rate of the various tests which we have available. On the basis of age alone, we'll pick up 30 to 50%. Dual marker and age is 60%. Age and NT will be around 80%. Combined screening, which is dual plus NT plus maternal age, will be 90%. And if this two all we add, our DV, TR, nasal bone, the detection rate becomes 95%. And 100% we know is by the invasive testing. An IPT as a universal screening will have a detection rate of more than 99%, and as a contingent screening will have a detection rate of 97%. Now, this is one of my standard first trimester report which I do. We have to find out the exact date of birth of the patient. Then we go on to the patient data, mention the racial origin, mention any history of previous child with trisomy, parity, then height, weight, any history of smoking, diabetes, chronic hypertension, SLE, antiphospholipid syndrome, and method of conception. These are very important because they have an effect on the risk calculation. Then we look at the various ultrasound parameters. We look at the heart rate, the CRL, the NT. We look at the DV, nasal bone, TR, uterines and cervix. These all parameters are mentioned. Also, there's a column if there's any major defect. Because if there's a major defect, then risk calculation changes. We enter all the blood pressure reading of the patient, and then we add the biochemistry. We add our PAPE, beta FCG moms, and we calculate the risk. This particular lady was a high risk on first trimester screening. Her CVS was done, and she was low risk for. Her CVS was normal, and she continued into a normal healthy pregnancy. So this was one of my routine first trimester report. Now, various parameters which I have mentioned in the report, will discuss them step by step. So as we all know, the risk of trisomy increases with the maternal age, and it decreases as the gestation advances because 30% of the affected fetuses die during the pregnancy. For other aneuploidies, trisomy 18, the risk increases with the maternal age and decreases as the gestation advances. Around 80% of the fetuses die in utero. There is no risk of maternal age with the Turners and triploidy. So these are the graphs and the charts which are depicting how the maternal age and the risk of trisomy 13 and 18 increases. For like a woman who is 20-year-old, her risk of having Down syndrome at term is around 1 in 1500. So which increases to, from at the age of 42, the risk of 1:100. So what is the role of scan? So ultrasound has a very important role in our Down syndrome screening because it does phenotypic screening. We have various ultrasound markers, we'll discuss them. So nuchal translucency, as we are all aware, nuchal translucency is the fluid collection behind the neck. So NT is a very important measurement. So what are the criteria for measurements? The fetus has to be between 11 to 13 plus 6 weeks. That is, the CRL has to be between 45 to 84 mm. Why has this criteria been chosen? This criteria is chosen because if we have to do further diagnostics testing, so if we cannot offer CVS or genetic testing before 11 weeks, because if we do CVS before 11 weeks, the chance of transverse limb reduction. And after 13 plus 6 weeks, we do not measure NT because the incidence of abnormal accumulation of nuchal fluid decreases. A lot of thick NTs might resolve after 14 weeks. And also as the gestation advances, the fetuses tend to be more vertical and taking these measurements become difficult. So the ideal time is when the CRL is between 45 to 84 mm. So we are all aware of the standard NT-NB image. So it has to be a mid-sagittal plane, neutral position. We have to distinguish skin from the amnion, proper magnification so that the entire head and upper chest occupies most of the screen. There has to be proper caliper placement. We have to measure the widest part, adjust the gain, and we have to take more than one measurement, and we have to note the maximum measurement. Zygomatic process should not be there. And we also have to have the neutral position. It should not be either flexed or extended because that alters our measurement. So this is the correct caliper placement. So the caliper has to be placed in the on, right from the inner margin to the other margin. Also, we have to make a note of the nuchal cord. If there's a nuchal cord, then we have to take the mean of the two NTs, one above and one below. Now, as we know, as the CRL advances, the NT also increases. So in euploid fetus, NT thickness increases with the CRL. In 80% of the T21 fetuses, the NT will be more than the 95. Maternal age can be combined with the NT. So if we see in the previous graph, so the 95th centile is now practically assumed to be 3.5 mm. So NT of 3.5 mm is practically above the is a 99 centile for irrespective of the gestation. Larger the NT, higher the likelihood ratio and higher the risk, and smaller the NT, smaller the likelihood ratio and lower the risk of T21. So what are the reasons for thick NT and what are the implications of thick NT? So the reasons for thick NT can be cardiac defect, cardiac dysfunction, venous congestion, altered composition of extracellular matrix, lymphatic failure, drainage, fetal anemia, fetal hypoproteinemia, and fetal infection. Thick NT, as we know, is implicated in trisomy 21, other chromosomal abnormalities, more than 50 defects, more than 50 genetic syndrome, structural and cardiac defect, fetal death. In spite of thick NT, there are still chances of having a healthy newborn. So what are the chances of adverse pregnancy outcome of thick NT with a normal karyotype? So if the NT is thick and the karyotype is normal, then still we have good chances. So for the NT of 3.5 to 4.4, there is 1 in 10 chances of abnormal outcome, means 90% fetuses will be normal. And as the NT increases, the chances of having a normal healthy baby decreases. So for the NT of 3.5 and above, there is 1 in 3 chances of having an abnormal baby. So for 100 fetuses, or the NT between 3.5 to 4.5, there are 80 euploid fetuses, out of which 2 will die and 8 would have major defects. There is 70 live births. So for NT between 3.4 to 4.5, we have 70% chances of having a healthy live birth. So as the NT increases, the chances of live birth and healthy baby decreases. So what is the counseling regarding the fetal NT below the 99 centile? So in how to decide whether we have to go for the invasive testing or go for the NIPT. So this depends on the overall patient-specific risk which we get by a combined first trimester screening. If the combined first trimester screening is low, then we can think in terms of NIPT. And if the combined first trimester screening is high, then we have to think in terms of invasive testing. Counseling regarding the fetal NT above the 99 centile. So the first line of management, if the NT is above the 99 centile, which is around 3.5 mm, is the CVS or invasive testing by amniocentesis. Now this is a graph or chart. How do we follow? If NT is more than 3.5 mm, we consult the patient. We do invasive testing. We do chromosomal microarray. We store the DNA. We do early anomaly scan and we do a FITO. And if on the early anomaly scan we see multiple anomalies, or we see persistent height drops or pleural effusion or cardiac problems, then we have to do further testing. We can offer exome sequencing and Noonan panel. We can offer to the patient. If the NT resolves from our NT scan to the time of level 2, then we can consult the patients that the risk of delivering a healthy baby and with normal neurodevelopment outcome will be same as the general population. If the NT persists and the nuchal thickness is there is a prominent nuchal fold in second trimester, there's a possibility of congenital infection and genetic syndromes, we have to do maternal torch, we have to look for parvovirus, we have to do follow-up growth scan, we have to do additional testing of the DNA, we can do exome sequencing, we can do rasopathies, Noonan syndrome, and also there is a risk of neurodevelopment delay by 3 to 5%. The next marker is nasal bone. Nasal bone helps to increase the detection rate and decrease the false positive rate. In nasal bone, improves the detection rate from 90 to 93% and decreases the false positive rate of the first trimester screening from 3 to 2.5%. So this is a perfect picture. We have to take a bit sagittal section of the face. There should be no zygomatic R, and the nasal bone should be more brighter than the overlying skin. So the CRL has to be between 45 to 84 mm. Magnification should be such that head and the upper thorax occupy the whole screen. We have to mid-sagittal view of the fetal profile, and the translator should be parallel to the direction of the nose, and we should be able to differentiate all 3 lines. So this topmost line is the skin, and this parallel line to below it is the nasal bone, and it should be as wide as the maxilla, and it should be brighter than the skin, and this is the tip of the nose. Absent nasal bone can be seen in 1 to 3% of the euploid fetuses. It is in T21, 60% cases can have absent nasal bone. In trisomy 18, 50% cases can have absent nasal bone. And in trisomy 13, 40% cases can have absent nasal bone. Absence of nasal bone is more common if we scan at 11 weeks than at 13 weeks. In thick NT, there are more chances of absent nasal bone, and if the mother is black. Now, nasal bone, this I've already discussed, improves the detection ratio, improves the performance of our combined first trimester screening, improving detection from 90 to 93%, decrease the false positive rate from 3 to 2.5%. So there are various charts for measuring the nasal bone. I find this one by Dr. Prashant Acharya very easy. At 11th week, the fifth centile for nasal bone is 1.1. At 12 weeks, 1.2, and nasal bone of 1.3 mm at 13 weeks. So this I use in my practice and I find it very easy to remember also. So hypoplastic nasal bone is associated with the 10 to 12% risk of chromosomal disease, and the incidence of aneuploidy is more if it is absent in the second trimester, and we have to use the Indian charts for the nasal bone. The next parameter we measure is fetal heart rate. So fetal heart rate we measure in the transverse or longitudinal section of the fetal heart. When the baby is quiet, the pulse Doppler is put and 6 to 10 waves are measured. So fetal heart rate in euploid fetus is at 6 weeks, heartbeat is around 110 and it increases to 170 by 10 weeks and again decreases to 150 at 14 weeks. In trisomy 21, in 15% cases, it is above the 95th centile. In trisomy 18, it is below the 5th centile in 15% cases. And in trisomy 13, it is above the 95th centile in 85% cases. So fetal heart rate has an important significance when it comes to trisomy 13. It helps us to differentiate between trisomy 13 and 18 and increase the risk assessment for that. So inclusion of fetal heart rate as such has only a small impact in detection of 21 and 18, but has a major improvement in detection of trisomy 13 and helps to distinguish between 13 and 18. Next, we move on to ductus venosus, the Doppler parameters. We have two Dopplers, ductus venosus and the tricuspid Doppler for the measurement of the Down syndrome screening. So ductus venosus, as we know, is a small vessel which helps to shunt the oxygenated blood from the umbilical vein to the inferior vena cava. So ductus has to be measured when the CRL is between 45 to 84. The baby should be quiet. The magnification should be such that the fetal thorax and the abdomen occupies the whole of the screen. We put in our color and umbilical vein. At the end of the umbilical vein, we'll see the aliasing. We put our caliper here. The gauge should be less than 1 mm. It should be low filter 50 to 70, and the sweep sheet should be 2 centimeters. 3 to 5 waves in the screen. So this is like a normal wave. 3 to 5 waves and mid-sagittal section, and thorax is occupying most of the screen. All this I've already told you. 50 to 70, angle should be less than 30, the gauge should be less than 1, and 3 to 5 waves should be there. Now ductus venosus is quantified on the basis of its A wave. So what are the different waves? So high velocity waves are seen S wave and D wave, which are S is during the ventricular systole, D is during the ventricular diastole, and forward flow during the atrial contraction is labeled as A wave. And positive ductus venosus is when the A wave is normal, and when the A wave is reversed, it is known as abnormal. So this is a S wave during the systole, ventricular systole. This is D wave during the ventricular diastole, and this is the A wave, which is during the atrial contraction. This is the normal wave of ductus venosus, and this is the reversed A wave of ductus venosus. Normal and the abnormal. So these two pictures are depicting the contamination. So we can have a contamination in the ductus venosus. Contamination can happen from umbilical vein and from the hepatic vein. Contamination happens when the Doppler gauge is more than 1 mm and the caliper is not based on the ductus venosus, or it is based on the umbilical and the hepatic vein. So what is the significance of the abnormal ductus venosus? Abnormal ductus venosus, A wave reversal is seen in 4% of the fetuses. More common if we scan at 11 than 13 weeks. More common if the NT is high and the PAP is low. It is associated with the chromosomal abnormalities, cardiac defects, and fetal death. However, 80% of the cases will still have a good outcome. So, abnormal ductus venosus is seen in 3% of euploid fetuses, in 65% cases of T21, 55% cases of trisomy 18, and 13% cases of trisomy 13. Addition of ductus venosus to combined first trimester screening improves the performance of the first trimester screening, improving detection rate from 90 to 95% and decrease the positive rate from 3 to 2.5%. So how do we counsel a patient with absent ductus venosus? So in absent ductus venosus, there are 40% chances of having various problems. So we'll offer the CVS and amniocentesis for the chromosomal microarray based on the combined first trimester screening. We'll do a detailed anomaly scan and fetal echo and serial growth monitoring throughout the pregnancy. In the absent DV, if the NT is above the 95th centile, then there are 40% chances of various problems, including chromosomal abnormalities, structural abnormalities, and cardiac defect. And if the NT is below the 95th centile and all scans are all fine, then isolated DV carries a good prognosis. So this I've already told you, combined first trimester screening of NT, age, and double marker has 90% detection rate with false positive rate of 3%. And addition of the newer markers improves the detection rate to 95%, decreases the false positive rate to 2.5%. The next Doppler marker we are going to discuss is tricuspid regurgitation. So tricuspid regurgitation has to be measured between the CRL of 45 to 84. The fetus has to be quiet. We have to have a apical 4-chamber view of the heart, and thorax should occupy the whole of the screen. We have to put a large caliper which has a gate of around 2 to 3 mm. Angle should be as close to 0, and sweep should be high, and there should be the caliper has to be placed 2/3 in the right ventricle and 1/3 in the right atrium across the valve, and we take around 3 measurements, and we take 3 measurements. Normal flow is defined when there is no regurgitation, and regurgitation is defined when there is a reversal of flow of more than half of the systole with a velocity of more than 60 centimeter per second. So this is how we place the caliper. This is a normal TR wave, and this is a reversal where we see that the backflow is more than 60 and for more than half of the systole. These are normal variations of the tricuspid regurgitation flow. This is a normal arterial flow, and this is less than 60. This is normal, and these clicks are because of the aortic valve. So tricuspid regurgitation again improves the performance of a combined first trimester screening. So TR is more common if it is measured at 11 weeks than 13 weeks, and more common if there is increased nuchal thickness, and increases the risk of chromosomal abnormality and cardiac defects. And whenever we see a tricuspid regurgitation, we must look for cardiac defects in the fetus. So it is seen in 1% of euploid fetuses and 55% cases of the T21 and 30% cases of trisomy 13 and 18. So we know TR is associated with the congenital defects, and early anomaly scan and fetal echo is recommended for the patient. Now let's move on to the serum biochemistry. So all trisomic pregnancies are associated with altered maternal serum concentration of the various biochemical markers. And screening, combined first trimester screening has 90% detection rate for trisomy 21 with 3% false positive rate. So we have PAPA and beta SG as the double components of double marker, and ideally they should be performed on FMF accredited platforms. So serum biochemistry is altered by the machine, the reagent used, the gestational age, maternal weight, ethnicity, smoking status, and method of conception. So all these things have to be appropriately ticked in the double marker form. So black race increases our beta SG moms and PAPA moms. Smoking decreases beta SG and PAPA, and IVF conception decreases the beta SG moms and lowers the PAPA mom. So all these parameters affect our risk calculations. They have to be properly noted in the forms. In euploid pregnancies, average beta SG is around 1 mom, PAPA is around 1 mom. In aneuploid pregnancies, in trisomy 21, beta SG is 2 mom and PAPA is 0.5 mom. And in trisomy 13 and 18, the beta SG and PAPA are both extremely low. So dual marker alone has 65% detection rate with a false positive rate of 5%. So now let's talk about the combined first trimester screening. If we scan at 12 weeks, so dual marker, the beta SG and PAPA have got various different sensitivity at different times. So at 90 weeks and at 9 to 10 weeks, the double marker is the combined first trimester screening is more sensitive compared to we taking a double marker at 12 weeks. So an ideal approach for achieving a good performance would be for screening for trisomy 21 will be to do a double marker at 10 to 11 weeks and doing ultrasound at 12 weeks so that we can achieve a detection rate of 90% for trisomy 21. So this is an FMF protocol which they follow for their population. So they combine maternal age, NT, fetal heart rate, and double marker, and they take 1:50 as 2000 as intermediate risk, more than 1:50 as the high risk, and less than 1:1000 as the low risk. So for the intermediate group, they add nasal bone, DV, TR, and further do the risk calculation. So after the newer markers added, if the risk is less than 1 in 100, then they follow routinely. If the risk is still high, then they do chorionic villus sampling. Now let's go on to NIPT. NIPT is a genotypic screening for the aneuploidies. So maternal blood has got DNA fragments which are both from the maternal tissue and from the placental tissue. So NIPT aims to check this fetal DNA on the maternal blood. This is not actually the fetal DNA, this is actually the placental DNA. So genetic sample of the fetus and placenta can be from the placenta. The DNA goes fragments into the maternal blood. This is like NIPT is like a liquid biopsy of the placenta. So other testing we know is CVS, in which we take the placental biopsy, and then we do the amniocentesis, and we know CVS and amnio are 100% diagnostic. So what is actually the principle of the NIPT? The principle of NIPT is sequencing to count how many DNA fragments from which chromosomes. So maternal blood has got two sets of information floating. So they're like two books. There's a maternal book and there's a fetal book. So we sequence all DNA fragments that is floating in the maternal blood, and we assign each fragment to its chromosome. And if we get more than expected DNA fragments from a particular chromosome, then it is high risk for that chromosome. So this is the principle how the NIPT works. Now what is fetal fraction? It is a percentage of the plasma cell-free DNA which is derived from the placental trophoblast. So fetal fraction is defined as fetal cell-free DNA divided by the total DNA, which is maternal and fetal. On an average is around 10%. Fetal fraction is actually a lab quality assurance criteria. So this chart depicts what is the detection rate at various fetal fractions. So if we have a low fetal fraction, detection rate is 62%. And as the fetal fraction increases, the detection rate increases. So for a fetal fraction of more than 7%, the detection rate is 99% and above. What are the different types of NIPT available? So we have targeted NIPT and we have the genome-wide NIPT. Targeted NIPT, as we routinely offer all our patients. Targeted NIPT will check for the most common autosomal trisomies 21, 18, and 13, and also for the sex chromosome aneuploidy. Genome-wide NIPT will check for all the 23 chromosomes, and all deletions and duplication more than 7 to 10 MB size it will be able to pick up. And we can have targeted NIPT for the microdeletions like 22q11 syndrome. So timeline of NIPT has changed in the entire decade. We started with trisomy 21 and we have moved on to genome-wide NIPT, and maybe in the near future we'll have single gene disorders also. So NIPT, why are we looking for 21, 18 and 13 is because 21 is the most common aneuploidy which is picked up around in 53% cases. Trisomy 18 is picked in 13% cases. Trisomy 13 in 5% cases. Sex chromosome abnormality in 12% cases, and other abnormalities around 17%. So we know NIPT can pick up 99% of T21 and 98% of trisomy 18 and 13 with a false positive rate of 0.1 to 2%. Twins also are currently being evaluated for NIPT, however the data is still limited. NIPT can be used for sex chromosome aneuploidies and for certain microdeletions such as 22q11 DGeorge syndrome. So how do we interpret the results of NIPT? So first we have to be clear that it's a screening and not a diagnostic test. A positive or high risk on NIPT should be confirmed by invasive testing, and we also have to keep placental mosaicism in our mind. So if a patient has a negative result on NIPT, it is low risk for 21, 18 and 13. It reduces the prior risk by 300 times for trisomy 21 and 50 times for trisomy 18 and 13. If the NT is more than 3.5 or there is a major defect on the ultrasound, then invasive testing has to be offered to the patient. Positive result on 21 and 18 and 13 needs to be further evaluated. If in case of positive 21, we can consider CVS. If it is positive for trisomy 18 and 13, and ultrasound features are also suggestive of trisomy 18, 13, then we can consider CVS. However, if it's positive for trisomy 18 and 13 and there are no ultrasound features, then we have to consider amniocentesis because there is a possibility of placental confined mosaicism. What is placental mosaicism? So mosaicism can be fetoplacental mosaicism, both the placenta and the fetus are mosaic, or it can be confined placental mosaicism, only the placenta is mosaic, or it can be fetal mosaicism, only the fetus is mosaic. If both fetoplacental mosaicism is there, then IPT can be both positive or negative. If only the placenta is mosaic, then it can give false positive on the NIPT, and if the placenta is not mosaic and the fetus is mosaic, then NIPT can give false negative reports. So if we are suspecting rare autosomal trisomies or our NIPT result is positive, so we can offer CVS in case of trisomy 21, but for 18 and 13 it is preferred, and when we are suspecting Turner, it is better to perform amnio than CVS. So what are the reasons for failed NIPT? So chances of failed NIPT is around 1.6 to 6.4%. The most common cause of failed NIPT is low fetal fraction. If the fetal fraction is low, there are 2.5% chance of aneuploidies, and we have to ask this entire list of questions, why did our NIPT fail? If the blood is drawn too early, then IPT can be failed. So preferably the blood should be drawn after 10 weeks. So we have to check, was it drawn too early? Was the fetus viable at the time of ultrasound? So before we give an IPT sample, we should be sure that the fetus is viable at the time of sampling. we have to take in the maternal weight. If the weight is more than 100 kgs, then the chance of failed NIPT is more. We have to look for any active autoimmune disease, malignancy, or other reasons for high cell turnover. Also, we have to see if the patient is low molecular weight heparin, and are there any ultrasound features suggested of triploidy or aneuploidy. So these are the limitations of NIPT. No fetal DNA or low fetal fraction, coding complexity, placental mosaicism, vanishing twin, maternal mosaicism, and maternal malignancies. How do we manage a failed NIPT? So first of all, we have to check with the lab regarding the explanation. We have to do a good quality ultrasound to look for the markers of aneuploidy. If ultrasound is all okay, then we can offer a repeat NIPT, or we can offer a combined first trimester screening and reassess this risk. If it is a low risk, we can repeat the NIPT, and if it is high risk, then we can offer invasive testing. So this is a flow chart for failed NIPT. Do a detailed ultrasound, all okay, repeat NIPT, and low risk we can avoid invasive testing. If on ultrasound there are abnormal findings, or if there is high risk on combined first trimester screening, then we offer invasive testing. So an IPT can be used in two ways. Either we routinely do an IPT for the entire population, or we do selective. So routine for the entire whole population is not a very cost-effective way. So the ideal way, which will be cost-effective and decrease our invasive testing, will be to offer NIT for the intermediate group. In the Indian scenario, we take a cutoff of 250 to 1000. In the FMF, they are taking a cutoff 1:100. What are the chances that a microarray will find something significant after a low-risk targeted NIPT? It depends upon the NT. If NT is more than 3.5 mm or above the 99th centile, then the chances that microarray will find something significant in 5% cases. If NT is between 3 to 3.4, then a microarray has a chance of 1.7. This is for the targeted one. Now, if we do a whole genome-wide NIPT, so chance of finding anything significant on microarray is around less than 1%. This is a pathway which I picked up from prenatal diagnosis about the how to manage increased NT. So if there's an increased NT after a low risk NIPT, there's increased chances of atypical chromosome conditions, single gene disorders, and structure abnormality. The overall risk of adverse outcome if NT is more than 3.5 is 1 in 3. We do a first trimester tertiary care scan, and there 31% risk of structure abnormality if NT is between 3.5. We offer invasive testing. We do microarray. If there's an abnormality, there's 11% chances of having chromosome abnormality. And if the ultrasound is normal, there are 3% chances of chromosome abnormality. CVS is more preferable because we can store DNA, and if further testing is required, we can do. After the first trimester scan and CVS, we follow the patient at 16 to 17 weeks. If everything is all okay at the 16-week scan, there's 85% favorable outcome. And if on the 16-week scan, we see multiple abnormalities, or there's a persistent thick nuchal, or we see pleural effusion, pericardial effusion, then we have to do further testing, and we have to think in terms of rhazopathy. And if NT is more than 5 mm, then also we have to offer for the rhazopathies. We follow up the patient for 20-week scan, and everything is okay at 20 weeks, then there are 98% chances of normal outcome. So first trimester screening should be offered to everyone, and there's a free online calculator which is available to all the people who clear the online theoretical test and submit the satisfactory NT images, and the audit requires to be renewed every year. The take-home message is that combined first trimester screening has to be offered to every patient, and addition of the DV and TR improves the detection rate of a first trimester screening, decreases the false positive rate. Appropriate methodology should be followed, and important clues to congenital heart defects. And cell-free DNA is a very important screening tool, and it has a 99% detection rate for trisomy 21, 98 for 18 and 13. In twin pregnancies, the results are encouraging, but the data is still limited, and it can also detect for the sex chromosome aneuploidies and microdeletions like 22q11. Thank you for your kind attention.
So, thank you, Dr. Savita, for such a comprehensive overview of both the biochemical and the ultrasound markers in the first trimester. So we will take up the questions at the end, and I would like experts to give their comments if they. So Dr. Varshini, would you like to comment something, add something on Dr. Savita's talk on your ultrasound? Yeah, you are mute, I think.
Oh, it was an excellent presentation. She had covered everything quite comprehensively.
Yes, very comprehensive.
So we are doing the screening test at this time, but it is important to look at the major abnormalities also in the fetus at the same setting. We can look at the brain abnormalities, heart abnormalities, and limb abnormalities quite easily at 12 weeks as well. And because I am very partial to fetal heart, I like to look at the fetal heart at 12 weeks itself. I don't want to wait till 16 weeks, because particularly when there is a tricuspid regurgitation present. Because the tricuspid regurgitation per se is actually, we are looking for the AVSDs. And so,
Yes, yes.
so we should be looking for AVSDs and congenital heart defects at the time of screening, at the time of NT scan itself.
Yeah, so all the soft markers, all the anomalies.
Yes.
So in total. So, ma'am, Dr. Deepika Dekar, I would want you to give your
Yeah, I just thought that I wanted to put it forth that in these meetings, which are primarily meant for obstetricians, we should, not talk like in a fetal medicine meeting. We should talk about what is of interest to the obstetrician, what they should know. And they don't really have to know how to measure everything. That's for the fetal medicine person to do.
This will just
They should
prime
know
them,
how
ma'am.
to
We will have this
interpret.
discussion.
Yeah, how to interpret, because there are more important things that needs to be discussed. As Dr. Varshney said, that it is important that we could have discussed about malformations also, because malformations are also related to aneuploidies. Like in the first trimester, if the placenta is enlarged, what do you get? We have seen cases of triploidies. I mean, it's not just restricted to all this. Then what is also important for the obstetrician to know that if they have done a first trimester screen, is it necessary for them to do a second trimester screen? Because a lot of people are doing and then landing up in problems. Also the other thing is that each of the markers are important. I mean, should you look at each of the markers separately? What happens if you find an NT which is high, but a dual marker which is normal? So there are so many things which the obstetrician should know. So maybe you can cover them all, Seema,
in our panel discussion, we will try to touch up.
Because these are very important points
Very
as
rightly
far as the
pointed.
first trimester
Yes.
screening goes. Yes.
Doctor-
So we should keep our level to the level of what the obstetrician should really know. If there is time, you go ahead for everything, but there's really no details. I'm talking about the panel feature so that the obstetricians don't get bored. And secondly, the important points are not missed out.
Yeah.
Which are the problems that they're dealing with every day? Will a patient really come at 10 weeks for doing the biochemical screen and then again at 12 weeks for the ultrasound? What can be suitable? What about the Oscar? All those things are better from the viewpoint of the practicing busy obstetrician. Okay. Yeah, Doctor.
Ma'am, Sanjeevni ma'am, welcome ma'am.
Sanjeevni, you must
I would
be
like to hear
facing a
from
lot
you
of
as
problems.
well.
So you would be a better person to tell what you all exactly want.
Deepika and Dr. Seema, and I think Dr. Savita, I must congratulate you for covering so much in this much time and giving us telling us the importance of each and everything with attention to detail. And Dr. Deepika, I agree with you that unless we are sort of involved in this and have in-depth knowledge, so many things can be a little technically high advanced for us. So we have to strike a balance. But nevertheless, I think the presentation, at least as far as I am concerned, and many other obstetricians would agree, that it is something which is an eye-opener. So I congratulate Dr. Savita. Now, I just want to ask or mention one point that apart from the technical details, the family history of the patient or the past obstetric history of the patient, what importance do you place on that while you evaluate tests? So you do a first trimester screen, but you have a high-risk history. She's had a baby with a Down syndrome, and now you have an NT tested at the correct CRL, which is at the 99th percentile. So would you then offer her invasive testing, or would you say, let me see further testing and an early level 2 scan? Dr. Savita, please.
Ma'am, with the previous history of Down syndrome and
Sarita comments. I wish to tell again, for a professor to take a class for undergraduate is very difficult. The other day they had been on the aneuploidy screening and 95% was zero. And today again, after super specialist presentation, I think everything went above us. And this is what we need to see. When we find the first trimester screening is to the tune of only 30%, 40% in a city like Delhi, you should try to see that you give us 10 points. You can't make us fetal medicine expert. And I'm telling you, on the last day also, I said that, 95% went zero. It was boring. And again, I will say that today is the same thing. For you to treat us as an undergraduate, then only you can teach us. We do not know. 90% did not know about it, that 50% Down syndrome have a cardiac problems. एक छोटी सी इतनी इंफॉर्मेशन नहीं मालूम, किस तरह से तीन तरह के मंगोल बेबी हो तो वो भी नहीं मालूम. They will love to hear कि भाई 21st March is a Mongols Day or something like this. Make it very light. I mean, I'm telling you, this is not the way the webinar should go on. We should try to see that we take care of the 5,000 gynecologists here in Delhi and motivate from 30% it goes to 40%. And that is why if the fetal medicine expert is going to do it, it is always going to be undergraduates will go bold.
I'm very sorry, madam, but I had told Dr. Seema earlier also that our webinars are meant for obstetricians, which are level of the PG. So we should be that. I mean, we can talk very details in fetal medicine.
हम तो undergraduate वाले हैं. अगर हमारे जैसे शारदा जैन 20 साल पढ़ाने के बाद से समझ नहीं आया what Dr. Dagar has said.
Because lot of time when a patient comes to us, they come with a set of pictures. So when you are evaluating whether the scan is up to mark or not, we should be as obstetrician know whether these images are appropriate or not. So in my presentation, I try to discuss you the images so that when pictures come to you, you can see those pictures and decide, are these images up to the mark? Can you consider this NT? Can you consider this DV and TR to be incorporated in a dual marker?
Yeah.
So I was trying to cover all aspects in 15 minutes
Okay.
which I was allotted.
So what
And
Ma'am,
I
we
have
have
seen
raised the obstetrician perspective in the panel
and then
discussion.
made my presentation.
I agree that this was too much, theoretical, but I think with this much knowledge and this much background, we have practical questions. So I think probably that's some better understanding from the obstetrician